Hi, Jesse. It's very nice to meet you and welcome to this online interview session here. Both of us are in Berlin. You are in Wedding. I'm in Prenzlauer Berg. It's not very far, but still we are facing limitations now. And this is the way we can communicate through Zoom. How are you?
Yeah, it's really nice to be here and also meet you online.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say I'm doing well. The seriousness of this situation sort of started becoming very real. It was difficult at first to practice because obviously, the news was every day like changing and, all the different rules and stuff. So it was kind of hard to get my head around that at first and also be motivated to practice, and concerts were being cancelled left, right and center, obviously, very sadly. And it was also unclear. And that for a week or maybe two, it was very difficult to play. But then once things have now sort of almost sadly become normal, this sort of quarantine lockdown situation, music has been like practicing and also taking the time now to actually focus and do things that you normally don't have time to do.
Mm-hmm.
For example, learning new repertoire that maybe you've always wanted to play, but it's particularly difficult, and so you can't really, learn it properly in time because you've got one concert after the other, and you've got other commitments and so on. So things like that. Also, studying different styles of music that you maybe haven't had time to study, and really reading about them and listening to lots of music. So I think that although obviously, concerts are the main motivation to practice the instrument and to make music, really, there's still so much now that can be done in this time. I'm trying to do a lot of things so that I can look back on it and think even a little bit positively about the whole time.
It's brave to see that actual work has been cancelled and you still keep on the motivation, because you and as well as other musicians know that if you don't practice, if you don't carry on motivation, and what's the point of being a musician? But how are you still dealing with this cancellations? Was it easy at first? Did you kind of, they're just going to be moved, or has it had an impact on you, like also kind of psychologically? Was it daunting at first before it became normality?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was also at the beginning, it was sort of, it began obviously with the next concert. So, the concerts that in a few weeks were cancelled. And then I thought, okay, well, in a month it'll be back to normal. But then
that's what everybody thought.
That's exactly.
Everybody said 1 to 2 months, and then we'll be back again, which is clearly not the case.
Exactly. So I think that at first it was sort of a case of, okay, well, these concerts aren't going to happen. And then I think, well, on a personal level, for me, one of the hardest, or one of the most sort of upsetting cancellations was a short tour with the singer Lottie Betstein of Australia, which is it's where I originally come from. And obviously the concerts I was really looking forward to, but also just the fact of going back home, I was really looking forward to. And that's now not really possible at all. Cancelled. So that was quite, that was upsetting. And obviously every other concert, including what would have been my first visit to Russia and my first, obviously, their concert in Russia and, in St. Petersburg, I was massively looking forward to that. And that was also, I mean, every concert did sort of hurt, and it's sad because you also, you put a lot of effort and planning into, the program and what you're going to play and everything, practice. But I think, as I sort of said before, the way that I'm trying to now deal with this situation is to really look at it and think, okay, well, I don't have these immediate concerts, but I can improve myself as a musician in other ways, maybe.
So I looked at your repertoire you were supposed to play in Russian. It's this beautiful kind of repertoire reminding me of the south of Spain, Concerto del Sur by Ponce. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes.
And that's a kind of the wonderful guitar repertoire. one hears of the orchestra and the conductor was supposed to be Henry Cheng, and he's fantastic guy too, so it would have been a beautiful connection you could have made, and hopefully will still make in next year. So what kind of repertoire is this for you? I mean, I looked at other things you play, and you play also quite distinguished like songs, Lieder and French Lieder. But what does such kind of show-off repertoire mean for you? Do you like playing it?
Yeah, so the Ponce Concerto is actually, well, to sort of go back a step, when the Musical Olympus Festival approached me to play with orchestra, they asked me what I would like to play, and of course I immediately said the Concierto de Aranjuez by Rodrigo. Everyone I sort of said that just because I thought, well, firstly because I have experience playing it, and it's a masterpiece. It's amazing, and I thought that's probably what the festival would want. And they actually wrote me saying, "Oh, you know, we've had quite a few of those."
Yeah,
the last
that's true. I remember.
Yeah, and that was, I was a little bit surprised. I was and very happily surprised actually, because as guitarists, our concerto repertoire is actually quite big.
Yeah,
people don't give it enough credit, I think, and we do have some, you know, really good concertos from various composers, and they just don't really get played because the you know, Aranjuez has the monopoly on, you know, all the.
it has a leading melody that everybody, it just sticks in your head. It doesn't get out. Like even now you say Aranjuez and I'm immediately da, 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 da.
Exactly, and it is, even though everyone knows it, and you could almost say, you know, it's almost become a little bit kitsch almost in a way. I mean, but it isn't. I mean, it is such beautiful music and really emotional music. Yeah, so I suggested this, and then the festival sort of said we'd like something different, and I was really happy about that. And I have to say, I think it's really on a par with the Aranjuez. I mean, it has some really beautiful themes, and has a really beautiful cadenza as well for the guitar. And I was really looking obviously really looking forward to playing it with orchestra for the first time. And it's music that I really love, and I play also other pieces by Ponce, and he's a really great composer. He's not one of the really famous, well-known composers from his time, but I think he's very underrated actually, and I think this concerto is as well. So,
and he was Spanish, right? Or was he Southern?
From Mexico, actually.
Oh, he was from Mexico. Okay.
Yeah, he was from Mexico, and he actually studied in Berlin.
You see, I imagine like this kind of Andalusian guy sitting somewhere.
So he was from Mexico, and he studied in Berlin, and I believe I may be right, in Italy as well, but I believe but in Italy, in any case. And then he returned to Mexico and was a teacher and a pianist there, and also a critic, and obviously composer. And he met Andres Segovia, the Spanish guitarist, in Mexico. And I believe that Ponce wrote a review for a concert of his, and then they became friends. And Segovia commissioned him to write lots and lots of pieces for him. And so this piece is, the concerto is no exception. So it's written for Segovia. And Segovia and him had a frequent exchange of letters, and Segovia sometimes, you know, would very specifically say, "Oh, no, I want, in the last movement, I want you to write something typically Spanish so I can, you know, play scales," or, you know, something like that. So, I haven't had time to look into the exchange of letters between them about this concerto, but I'm sure that there was something sort of similar that Segovia probably really said, "Oh, I want you to write it in this style." Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's always interesting when you find out. You always think there was the deep thought behind it, but then it turns out it was some scale he had to practice. And that's it. That's the reason for this beautiful melody, or a particular key or whatever. So speaking of the kind of Spanish Mexican background guitar that has clearly influenced guitar repertoire, you yourself are Australian, but of mixed race origins. So you are German on one side, and on the other side your dad has Chinese heritage, and you grew up in Australia. Playing the guitar, where do you feel at home? With the guitar and also independently?
Yeah, I think that probably the short answer is that I feel very at home with 20th century music.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a massive range of styles just within that that century. I mean, obviously, um, but those when I think of the pieces that I feel just completely, yeah, I guess at home is a good phrase, at home with, and it is usually 20th century music. But having said that, the guitar, as you mentioned, is able to express so many different, well, is capable of so many different colors, and we have repertoire that is, you know, from the Renaissance, you know, which is maybe originally for lute or other plucked instruments,
Mm-hmm.
but which we can translate quite well onto guitar, all the way up to the present day. So we have a massive repertoire, really.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to do a lot of arranging a lot of the time, but we do have a lot of repertoire, and I think that that is one of the really great things about the guitar, actually, that um, we don't have, obviously, if you compare it to the piano repertoire, or, you know, even the violin or cello, of course you might feel like, oh, it's not that great, but really we have an amazing repertoire, and that's, I think, something that I really really value about the guitar, and I try to also take advantage of it. So I personally, I feel really at home with 20th century music, but I also try my best to feel at home in all these different epochs that are available to the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you say 20th century repertoire, what exactly do you mean? Which composers do you like?
Okay, so I particularly like Toru Takemitsu, the Japanese composer, and he wrote quite a number of, I mean, not massive amount, but quite a few pieces for guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love his approach to the guitar and the way he understands the guitar. His very personal way of writing for the instrument. I think it's a perfect match, actually. The colors and the different sort of sounds he asked for. I also really love playing a piece by Benjamin Britten, called Nocturnal, after John Dowland, which I've played over the years many times, and I really think it's a true masterpiece, and I really love that. And then I also have played many times the sonata by Alberto Ginastera, the Argentinian composer.
Mm-hmm.
All these are all like completely different styles,
Yeah.
but just to name like the sort of like off the top of my head now a few, they're the sort of the music that that I've also gotten really good feedback on. People tell me that they particularly enjoyed that piece in the program, and I feel very confident and comfortable playing. Yeah.
So what do you think is it about 20th century composers? You mentioned they all have these different styles, but is there one unifying denominator, one common denominator, apart from the fact that they're from the same century? Is there anything that can unite them?
One thing that maybe they have in common, in very differing styles, is that they really write idiomatic music for the guitar. So there have been a lot of composers who write music that is almost piano music translated to the guitar. Even if it's originally for the guitar, it's not very easy to play, and you have to sort of cut notes and all that sort of stuff. And with Britten, it's really genius, actually. It's kind of almost impossible to imagine. He wasn't a guitarist, and he wrote a very small amount of music for the instrument, but he understood it so well. And Hinasera as well worked closely with the guitarists, and very openly and proudly sort of exploits the idiomatic nature of the idiomatic idiosyncrasies of the instrument. And Takemitsu, in a sort of different way, also really explores the different sonorities of the instrument and writes it. I think they all write with the guitar, so to speak, rather than against it, if that makes sense. I think that I really enjoy that aspect of those composers, that they flatter the guitar, which I think is really important, because there's so much music that I think is beautiful, and I play, and we all play, all the guitarists, but is very unflattering, or it's very difficult to make it sound round and nice and beautiful. We have to work so hard, and these composers really help us.
Yeah,
I think
that's very important, especially if you consider the fact that you are just beginning, or you already quite a up and coming guitarist, and you need to think ahead 50 years what it will be like, and might as well become fact that you support these composers and not play just like traditional repertoire that is given to you or requested from you, like the Concerto d'Aranjuez. Is very important for developing an instrument, and every musician needs to make an impact. Otherwise, in 50 years, if you look back, things might get lost. So it's very good that you're doing this. And speaking of Darmstadt, I think in 2014 you moved to Darmstadt from Australia, which is quite a significant move across the globe, half of the globe. How was this for you in terms of changing the environment, changing the kind of lifestyle, time zone?
I have a German mother,
Mm-hmm.
and I visited family in Germany regularly from when I was really a baby, an infant, to until the time I moved there. So it wasn't completely crazy. Like I'd been to Germany a lot, and I could speak German from my mother. I learned from her. So that, I mean, they're massive. They're really big advantages, obviously, and to have family in Germany. So although it was obviously geographically as well,
Mm-hmm.
massive, really big move, it was still quite familiar, I guess you could say. And to me, it just made so much sense, because I had a really great undergraduate course in Canberra with Tim Kane and Min Huang, the two guitar teachers there, and just totally inspiring 3 years there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was sort of always clear to me from a young age that I wanted to study abroad, especially Germany, because of the connections that I had with the country. And so it was sort of a step I think I always saw myself taking, or to move there. And I went to specifically Darmstadt because of Tilman Hopstock, who's an incredible German guitarist and teacher. And yeah, immediately I knew, okay, I really want to study with Tilman and work with him, and just sort of get everything I can out of him. And I'm really glad I did, because it was a totally productive time and inspiring time. And it did. And you asked sort of how was how was the move?
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of, although Germany was familiar, it was still it was quite weird, because I mean, as you all know, Germans can be, well, obviously Germans are different to Australians, and that sort of took a little while for me to.
The socializing on the street, how are you? And then I think it's not really, especially the Berliners can be very straightforward and very impolite.
And in Hessen, actually, where Darmstadt is, I had similar experiences with different people working in different sort of bureaucratic roles as well.
They're classic.
Exactly. So it did take a while to get used to, but those things, I mean, you do understand, you get used to it, and really, I mean, it was, in terms of getting used to in terms of changing from Australia to Germany, it was just a massive shift in mentality, in that in Australia, we're a massive country, but we have a small population, and all the cities are actually quite isolated from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come to Germany, you're in the middle of, Germany in itself has a massive music scene, let alone just guitar scene, which is also really big. And then outside of that, you've got all of Europe, and it was just, I mean,
overwhelming a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it was a little, and I mean, it was that thing of, going to the little thing of like little fish at a big pond sort of idea, that you arrive and you realize, oh wow, there's actually heaps and heaps of really good young guitarists out there that it maybe wasn't so clear in the little bubble in Australia.
Yeah.
Which I think for the first time going to Germany to really study and stuff, it really opened my eyes and was inspiring and made me want to just, yeah, immerse myself in that, in the different sort of, in all the concerts that were available, the different festivals. And
how is it that I think it was one of the competitions you've done, and that as a result from it, you created the duo Amoris with the singer Julia Spiez.
Yep.
What is the background story, and because it's quite a unique story, and it's voiced together with guitar, and I think you sing a lot of, I listened to a clip, it was Debussy. So
yes.
I assumed it's French music, but maybe it's also other things. Maybe you can give us a short, brief introduction into your project.
Yeah, so we met as a result of the Deutsche Musikwettbewerb, which is the German national music competition, I guess. And that was in 2016, so now a few years ago. And we both were awarded prizes, and the prize is in that competition isn't first, second, third, and you get money and other concerts, but rather that we were put on a list of other prize holders, and we got sent this list, and the list was just a name, the instrument or voice, and then the city they live in, and then the email. And then and phone number. And so we then and basically the Deutsche Musikrat, the sort of German music council, they basically said to us, okay, you have to make, and they do this every year, so they say, okay, you have to make an ensemble or a duo or whatever, and you have to come up with some programs, and then we send them to our massive database of concert organizers, and then you get booked how many times you get booked. And so they basically act as almost like your agent, sort of, or like your management. And it's much more useful than, I mean, obviously money is great, but it's much more useful than just getting a heap of money and then, because
no
it really,
contacts.
Exactly. And it allows you to actually build contacts and to play a lot of concerts. And for me, it was also really important because I met Julia through that. Also, Ildiko Sabo, really fantastic Hungarian cellist, and we also still play together. But as you mentioned, Julia, we met through that, and we played. I think we like almost 15 recitals in, like, I don't know, 4 months or something. So quite intensive. And
in all of Germany.
Exactly, yeah. And
Austria as well. Like
no, it was just in
Germany.
And it was in not only sort of the more well-known cities, it was also in every little town as well. It was all over Germany. So I really got to know Germany through those recitals as well. And so we developed 2 programs, and then we decided after that season was done that we would like to also make a CD. And so we recently, just a month ago, or more or less, released our CD Nachtstücke, which has songs by Debussy, as you mentioned, Granados, Manuel de Falla, and also Franz Schubert. So it's a mix of different composers, and there's the overarching theme of sort of the night and this sort of thing. And we do, and I mean there's just a selection. That's just one program. We have even more. We do other sort of styles as well, but that shows just in that CD that there is a lot of repertoire that is possible in our combination. And I think that it is a really overlooked combination, I think, because
definitely, I mean, when it's very unusual.
Yeah,
it's not something that people would immediately come up with. It's actually, guitar and voice probably is much older because of the mandolin and all these things, and the voice was always accompanied by these things, but then maybe turned more into a singer-songwriter relationship. And the concept of it being I'm carrying on.
Yeah,
The concept of it being a classical recital too, voice and guitar is just not, it's kind of not in your first sight. I mean, maybe after researching you will come across it, but it's not the first thing you think of.
No, it's not, and it's and as you sort of mentioned, you think of like really early Baroque and also Renaissance works for voice and lute and voice and viola and all those sort of things. It's a completely natural setting, plucked instrument and voice. And we think of pop music today and jazz and all across the world, guitar or plucked strums, plucked instrument with voice is a completely natural thing. And then obviously like the Deutsche Lieder tradition didn't really have that because the guitar didn't really play a central role and composers were writing for piano. And but even in the time of Schubert, there were guitarists who were transcribing his songs for guitar, and also Schubert himself owned a guitar, and it's believed that he probably composed on it when he was traveling. There are, for example, one of the songs on our album was originally written for the guitar, and there's only a guitar and song version. It was published in that way. So either the publishers arranged the piano just for the guitar, because that's what the publishers sometimes did. They released a guitar and a piano version of the song. And so there's definitely evidence that in that time the guitar was used, but it was not really not in the same way as the piano, obviously. And it's and then for example, Debussy, obviously he never really played guitar, wrote for guitar, but his music
his music has a lot of sound opportunities for the guitar.
Yeah, exactly. There's I mean, talking about color and that sort of thing, the guitar is well suited for that. And then the Spanish music that we record on the CD is sort of self-explanatory. It's almost like some of the times that Falla and Granados wrote guitar music and transcribed it for piano, and I'm just transcribing it back to the guitar. That's how I sort of feel about it a lot of the time. So that is very natural. So I think that and then of course there's the famous duo of Peter Pears and Julian Bream, who they played a lot of old Elizabethan era music together with Julian Bream on the lute, and also Britten and Walton and other composers from that era also wrote for them. So it has a history, it has a tradition, the guitar and voice duo in classical music, but obviously has also been neglected, I think. And I think it's a shame, because it's a really natural and beautiful combination.
Yeah, but it's good that you're reminding the ears. But the second question, or maybe another further question, do you think there's a stereotype for the guitar to be defined as an accompanying instrument?
I think
it's a very general question, obviously. It's not the yes or no answer.
Well, I think that the guitar, I think that it would be interesting to ask, if you asked most people, when you think of guitar, what do you think? It wears so many hats, so to speak. It is, especially in modern times. So obviously a lot of people might associate it with singer-songwriter strumming chords, or like, that it's just an accompanying sort of like campfire music. So I think that that's definitely in sort of, even within classical musicians that aren't guitarists also maybe don't know much about it. Yeah. Probably maybe that stereotype. But then it's also so many, like there's so many sort of virtuoso electric guitarists that have really stood out in the mainstream. And then also, guitarists like Andres Segovia and Julian Bream have really lifted the status of the sort of lifted the status of the guitar in the minds, also in the classical world. So I guess that, I don't know if it has a stereotype of necessarily being an accompaniment instrument, but I do think that there's a stereotype of it being sort of a nice little instrument, but kind of exotic, and doesn't really have any good repertoire or not much, and it's really quiet. You can't hear anything, like, can't you play other? Like, there's that
There's a
like,
microphone.
yeah, exactly. Like, so I think that those are sort of, for me, when I play for a cellist, for example, or like a pianist or something, a lot of the time they want more sound. They want always more. I think that that's sort of a stereotype, maybe, that the guitar just isn't, it's not loud enough, or like, that sort of thing, or that, it's, yeah, we don't have much good repertoire, and the guitarists are all a little bit, I don't know, we're not as well educated as
Yeah. There are these stereotypes, but then actually, if you ask an instrumentalist about opera repertoire, they will stumble.
Yes.
Those who always say that the others don't know will eventually stumble. And I think there's a lot of discrepancy in the classical world. You always think a singer will know all the instrumentalist repertoire, or the instrumentalist will know all the opera repertoire. It's not possible to know everything. And even between the instrumentalists, like, I'm not sure a violinist knows the entire repertoire double bass can play. And vice versa. Well, maybe vice versa more, because it's just more out there. But I always appreciate a lot soloists who pick, you didn't pick the easiest instrument for a soloist to be successful as a soloist and chamber musician, because it's an unusual instrument in this particular sphere, and it takes a lot of courage to develop it, and there is a lot of competition.
Yes, that's all true.
And so, referring to competitions, the recent competition you won was the, one moment, Michel Pitaluga International Guitar Competition.
Yes.
Did I pronounce it the right way?
I think,
or Michele.
I think Michele.
The Michele Pitaluga International Guitar Competition.
There you go. Yes.
So how did it feel for you to perform in a competition? What are the positive effects, and what are also the side effects to a competition?
Yeah. So this was, I think, pretty much the only competition I did last year. The years before, I'd done sort of a little bit more regularly, but I decided last year I wanted to slow down and not spend too much time focusing on them, for reasons that I'll soon talk about. But basically, I realized last year, when I was preparing for it, and when I was traveling there, and then obviously on stage, how there's just something about a competition that, for me anyway, just makes me so incredibly uncomfortable and nervous. There's just something different, and I felt this especially last year, because I hadn't done one in quite a while, and I'd played a lot of concerts. I sort of, last year, had a lot to do, and then I thought, okay, I'll do this competition. I've got a lot of the repertoire. I can use it, and I'll just prepare like it's a concert and then go. But it's not. It doesn't. You can try, and for me anyway, I tell myself as much as possible, it's just a concert. People want you to play music, but it's just something really scary about it. But having said that, the competitions, especially the early ones that I did, taught me so much about performing on stage under pressure, and how to deal with it, because there is, as I said, for me anyway, it's really scary, and it makes you inhibited. It makes you scared of playing wrong, so that you'll be kicked out, but you just have to sort of get over that. And if you can try and make music and express yourself in those conditions, then playing a concert is going to be so much more relaxed and enjoyable, which they are in comparison for me. Anyone, I think it's so easy to talk about all the bad things about competitions, and I think that we should talk about them, and we should critique them and question, the value of them. And now there's so many of them these days. Is it really healthy, maybe, that there's so many of them? That's definitely something that should be talked about, and a lot of people do, I guess. But I, on the other hand, I don't want to complain too much, because I've gained so much from them. so many concert opportunities. For example, the one in Russia, like it'd be a bit wrong of me, I think, to just trash competitions and their merits when,
yeah,
on the other hand,
definitely.
so many opportunities. But I do think that it is dangerous to get too much in that mindset, because another aspect for me, and I think for a lot of people, is that there's sort of a standard competition repertoire that is very successful, sort of tried and tested, and it's easy to get into that hamster wheel of you just keep refreshing, like keeping the old that repertoire going, and that's going back to also the lockdown. Another opportunity now to sort of step back from all of that and just to think, okay, well, now that I don't have any commitments like competitions or concerts even, what repertoire can I explore that is just interesting and that, maybe wouldn't be good in a competition, but is of interest, of artistic interest. And I think
Exactly.
that's a little bit tricky when there's so many competitions out there, and when that the prizes are so tempting, and
I think
it's
also the money prizes, like you said, the one competition, the German one you did, now that is something I really like, because, and I think it's very healthy, because you actually get an opportunity to perform. Due to COVID, you're now restricted in traveling, and we talked about your canceled concerts. You are keeping your motivation with the repertoire you're learning, you're teaching, but what is it particularly that you can advise young musicians as yourself, but also maybe those musicians who are only beginning to get to stage, to do right now, not to fall into despair because they're wasting half a year? Some people might think, oh no, we're wasting half a year of our lives, and we've had this performance in this hall and this festival, now it's gone, and will we get another chance? Will we get another shot? What do you advise them emotionally, psychologically? How can they keep on?
Oh, that's a big question. Well,
Yeah.
I think first of all, I would say that it's okay to not be at your most productive and most motivated in a global pandemic. I think that's the first thing to acknowledge. That, if you are feeling down and you're not feeling 100% motivated, that's not that unusual. Probably a lot of people are going through that. But I would say that life will eventually. We don't know how long it's going to take. It might be a year, maybe longer, might be less. I don't know. But it will go back to normal at some stage. And I think that there's been a lot of online concerts. I actually did one recently as well, and there are a lot of great upsides to it, but I don't think that anyone is really seeing it as like, oh, well, we have online concerts, we don't need concerts anymore.
No, definitely not.
So,
Agreed.
not at all. I think everyone is dying to get back to live music. So I think that having that thought there is sort of really worthwhile, to think, okay, well, at some stage, this is going to, go back to normal, everything. So it is worth, refining and maintaining your skill, your craft, and to see this, I guess, as an opportunity. Well, this is just how I'm seeing it. So I can say that from my point of view, I'm trying to see this as not only a time to refine instrument skill on the instrument, but actually to really just gain more knowledge and an appreciation for just music in general, reading about music, listening to lots of different music, and this sort of thing. And I think that that's maybe an opportunity that we don't always have, because we have a deadline to meet. We have to spend 5 hours in the practice room, doing or whatever. And now, we have time, we have the luxury to actually just immerse ourselves maybe in things that we didn't have time to do. Yeah.
Or
So
try new techniques.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If it's whatever it is, like, for example, I'm now finally taking the time to arrange some cello suites, Bach cello suites for the guitar.
Wow. That's
Which
very nice.
I'd always wanted to do, and now it's a time where I can actually do it and slow down. And
well, thank you for this interview. I hope it's going to turn out well. I hope I asked the right questions. You definitely gave the right answers.
Thank you. It was fun. Yeah.